Hello, South Africa. A very warm welcome to Expressions. This is definitely the place for you to air your views. I'm your host, Jacqueline Mapala.
And I'm your host, Mkolisiwa Gomasango. Now, namhlanje we're not live, but of course, as you can see, we're coming to you from our headquarters in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. It's great to have you, Muntomusha. And we're still keeping safe, Jacqueline, with our masks on, and we're just also sanitized. And we hope you guys are also doing the same in Laphe Kaya. Well, Jackie, we continue to have important conversations, Lagwe Expressions, and namhlanje we are asking a very important question. Siyabuzage, are young people confident about the leadership of the African National Congress as well as its youth league? Wanumbuzo mkhulu. Do stay in touch with us again. We are on Facebook as well as on Twitter as Expressions_10.
And yes, Mko, that's a very important, at least, conversation that we're having tonight, especially considering the fact that the ANC just turned 109. So they're literally celebrating their anniversary this year, which makes them the oldest liberation movement on the continent. Now, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the nation in his January 8th statement, where the ANC basically gave an outline, a traditional outline around their plans and hopes for the country. Now, we asked young people, are you confident in the leadership of the ANC, but most importantly, the plans that they've outlined in the January 8th statement? And this is what you had to say. Take a look at this.
I think the ANC should just continue to, drive its mandate and not deviate much from the goals as for youth employment. There really has to be a change.
ANC is not helping us with anything because the one issue we're dealing with here is unemployment.
They say things that they don't deliver.
Let's start with the people that are just matriculating. They can't even go to school if they're not able to get money.
It's a lot of talk and no action, no movement, no progress. I do believe in the current leadership of the ANC. I mean, in the way that we've handled the coronavirus so far, and the leadership that the initiatives that they've taken to make sure that everybody is safe and is following protocol.
Although there's still more that can be, done from the ANC that we really expect from the ANC, we wouldn't like for them to only take advantage of the society only when it comes to, the elections and all those kind of things.
January 8th statement by the president. He spoke about tackling poverty, improving the livelihoods of people. He spoke about education and skills and making sure that young people are equipped for the fourth industrial revolution. He touched on gender-based violence. I mean, he touched on a lot of issues. Have we not heard this before? Is this not ANC rhetoric all over again, where implementation is still a challenge for them?
I think that's really the challenge with the ANC, and that's the challenge that the president is facing, because many people are aware that there are many beautiful, lovely love letters that the ANC has written towards the public in the last almost 27 years now. And the challenge is the credibility around delivery. When the Chinese say that they're going to have made in China 2025, people take them seriously because they know if a Chinese guy says we're going to make 5 cars, they mean it. When the Germans say they're going to execute on something, people expect them to do the same. I think what we're facing in Africa broadly and critically here even as well is that people have had the president promise a certain number of jobs, then come back and say, well, those jobs are not coming, and then promise something else and then that not be delivered. So there's a real crisis of credibility, and that takes away from the punch that the speech that the president gave could have had.
Mm-hmm. And I think the simple question that we've posed on our poll question is, do young people actually have confidence in the leadership of the ANC, especially considering the infighting, the factionalism? Do they have confidence in you?
Look, I think let's first by agreeing that the African National Congress is faced with challenges, and the ANC is the first to acknowledge that, to say that we're faced with challenges. And part of the challenges that we're faced with is the issue of corruption, because the post-1994, there are clear programs that must be implemented to address the injustices of the past, because we know very well that we're from a history of apartheid, where majority of the people of South Africa, which are black by majority, were oppressed and sidelined from all activities of the country, including economic and political activities of this country. Now, during that process, there were those that infiltrated the ANC and used that platform for their own self-enrichment. We have people who are self-centered, who are acting on those things. That's why the ANC even today Internally, the setup is what you call Integrity Commission, which advises those who are charged for corruption and many other issues to step aside. Because corruption is one of the biggest enemies that delays the program, that because the ANC has agreed that it needs to develop a program of making sure that at least by the same time they must be able to have addressed the high level of inequality that are faced in this country, or must be able to have addressed the issues of poverty that are faced by our people in this country. And you can't do that if there's high level of corruption and there are those who are delaying those progress.
Yeah, but Colin, in fairness, we've heard you. I think, and when I'm saying heard you, I'm talking about as the organization, as ANC, speaking about the very same thing. And that's what I asked Jamie in the beginning around the rhetoric. I mean, as someone who is running for ANC Youth League president, what exactly are you going to offer young people who currently are watching the show right now in terms of alleviating some of the challenges and struggles that they have, and not have you promise and never ever deliver? What are you going to do differently if you were to be voted as president?
Look, the role of the ANC Youth League, firstly, is to influence policy positions of the African National Congress. The African National Congress is the one that is voted into power as the ruling party. And I think part of the policy positions that will push very hard to influence, to address one of the major issues that we're faced with is the issue of high level of unemployment of youth, because the biggest thing that we're faced with now, and COVID-19 has not made it even easier. We're having more and more young people who have been sidelined out of economic activities of the country. One is that I feel that it's very important that we influence that the level of, we must cut down the percentage of export of raw materials. We can't export over 20% of raw materials of this country. Who must be able to deal with the secondary part of it and the tertiary part of it. Those are areas that must create jobs. We must revive our industries. And the only way to do that is to make sure that we use what we have, the God-given gift that we have on our land, to make sure that we create jobs for our people. And that is to make sure that we participate in the secondary development of the country's economy.
Well, I mean, Mobogedi Kokhaya, as a young person, you've heard Colin, he's running for ANC Youth League president, and we've also heard the January 8th statement that was delivered by the president. Are you confident that this is the type of leadership that will take you into the next chapter of this country as we're looking at 2021 and we're looking at unprecedented times of COVID-21? It's up to you to decide. You're watching Expressions. We'll be back right after this.
You still with Expressions, and we're still your number one youth current affairs show. Are young people still confident in the African National Congress and its Youth League? Please keep those comments coming in Kundlan Zethu Zoxhumana. We are on Facebook as well as on Twitter. I've got some young people joining me namhlanje, and I know there's so many things that we need to break down from the statement. Perhaps if you can please take to the mic there and just, speak to us about some of the things that are closest to your heart that came out of the statement for you.
Well, at the end of the day, I wouldn't necessarily say anything came to me as close as it should be, because then it comes to a point where whenever the president speaks, he only gives promises that he never delivers. And for one, I mean, I like what you said when you mentioned that, the ANC puts people aside who are actually accused for corruption. But question is, do you only just put them aside, or do you really take action? Because if you look at it right now, a lot of money has been looted through the PPE and then all these other things that of which were supposed to be implemented during the whole lockdown and before even the lockdown. But question is, what is it that the ANC is actually doing rather than just putting the people aside? We need to see action. We need to see the people who are looting money from the government in jail.
At the back of that, I think I also want to bring something that has been, a great talking point, Budwami, in Tlupego, poverty has become central as well for South Africans amaningi. Do you feel Uguti ruling party has let abantu abasha bala eMzansi down? What would your take on that be?
He mostly spoke about political education. But now my problem is that when you talk about political education, it's like you're trying to drive people into becoming politicians, or rather being more involved in politics. But what is it that the government is actually saying in regards to financial literacy? If we talk about financial literacy, that is one of the key points that would ensure that our people get out of poverty. How do government ensure that our people actually do have financial literacy? Because at the end of the day, when we talk about financial literacy, we're talking about how our young people can use money, ensuring that they have financial freedom, rather than only just talking about politics. Because we can talk about politics on a day-to-day basis, fine. But question is, what is it that we're doing to ensure that our people are out of poverty?
I know you are from the business sector. What were some of your pickups from the statement?
For me, honestly speaking, it just sounded like another wishy-washy speech. And I think it was overcompensated with ambiguity that had no conclusion, that had no solution, that had no definitive measure of implementation to say this is how we're going to move forward. And I think it's about time we need to start realizing that government is not going to help us. At the end of the day, a government employee is another human being from your community. It's not going to be some billionaire from another place. And the thing is, I want to refrain from being disrespectful, because at the end of the day, it still is our leadership. One thing that we should do as South Africans, whatever the clarion call is, we should not accept mediocrity as a service, and we should not accept mediocrity and inconclusive results in the coming future. We need to start using our relationships with the BRICS. Whatever he's saying, the story is nice, but the implementation is not going to be done by them. The implementation is going to be done by the future yous, the future us. And we need to stand together. We can't keep this narrative of pointing fingers at one another like we would do something better, because we don't know the dynamics of that environment. I commend him for saying people need political education, but we don't need political education for something that we can blatantly see is wrong.
Okay, let me bring in Sis Nandi as well into this conversation. You can use this mic, Siswami. I know there were also some points that you wanted to bring to our attention as well, pertaining to the January 8th statement. What would those be?
What I'd like to add is that as the youth, we have moved on from when in 1994, people were happy just to be free. Now, I was born in the late 90s. I don't know anything about the old ANC. And what I want to see is service. I want to be served. And I haven't seen it as yet. So where is the accountability for the things that I have been promised as a young person and I haven't gotten them? There were promises that there will be there will be like a lot of job creation. There will be, now there will be vaccines for everyone. But when it doesn't happen, who do I hold accountable? Who do I go to and say, you know what, you promised us this, it wasn't delivered, so therefore you do not deserve to run the country, because that's how it should be. But also now, it's time for other people to step up and run the country in a way that people will be able to be held accountable for their actions and for the things that they do not achieve but promise. Because a lot of times, you don't even watch speeches anymore, because they will tell you it does not speak to us, because the things that are being said there do not resonate with us. You're not telling us how you're going to help us financially. You say start businesses, but with what? Our schools do not even give people opportunities to learn more about entrepreneurship. They do not promote it. They promote people to rather go to school and then, after get a job. Jobs that are not even there. So you end up having 7 years being at home, then you end up doing drugs or whatever. So what is the government going to do to be able to hold themselves accountable and do better?
Sis is speaking about accountability. What would your takeout from the statement be?
No, I think on the issue of accountability within the NC is that the NC does not want to deal with the issue of corruption across all factional lines. You found that those who are in power are doing all in their power to fight those from other factions, but they don't deal with people within their factions who are corrupt. But also, to answer your first question, are young people still confident in the leadership of the NC and its youth league? I think young people are still confident on the leadership of the NC, but the problem is the absence of the youth league. As long as the youth league is led by e-wallet revolutionaries who are there in the youth league to defend factional interests of certain leaders, the youth league won't be able to influence the ANC to implement to implement things that are going to champion the interest of young people. For an example, we are talking about the fourth industrial revolution, but we failed to continue the culture of learning and teaching during lockdown. And as young people, we have always said that we want digital classrooms, we want paperless classroom. And the government listened to us that we want paperless classrooms. Young people are going to be able to access education while sitting at home. Had the ANC listened to us that we want broadband to be made a basic human right, young people are going to be able to continue receiving education while sitting at home. And also on the issue of unemployment, I think we need a youth league that is going to start telling the leadership of the ANC that as young people from township, as young people from informal settlements, we are tired of being reduced to job seekers. We want to play an important role in creating the same job opportunities that we are talking about. We are tired that there's going to be a learner who comes from some general smarts who's going to be a CEO of a big company, but young people from Deep Loop, Kliptown, Khayelitsha are supposed to continue being job seekers.
You're part of the Youth League as well,
yes,
right? So do you think that having an organization that is able to criticize itself is very important, as you're doing right now, to have an organization that looks in the mirror and criticizes itself? Do you think that's important?
I think part of the team task of the NC Youth League is to champion the interest of young people. We are not there to defend the leadership of the ANC when they are messing up. Our role is to champion the interest of the ANC. And if the ANC is failing to champion the interest of the ANC, we must be an ANC Youth League that is going to be able to tell those leaders that you are there, you are advancing your factional interest, and you are failing to champion the interest of young people. Because now we are led by e-wallet revolutionaries being paid to fight ANC leaders instead of fighting for young people, instead of championing the interests of young people. And we need to tell the leadership of that National Executive Committee that we don't want a leadership that they are going to select, because you are aware that there are certain leaders of the ANC who are handpicking leaders. So and so must enter so that he can defend a certain faction within the ANC.
All right, Jackie, Joba Soizwelege now, and of course, Mbugeli Lapekaya. We hope you're also participating in all of our social media platforms. And I'm hoping we might also get a response, maybe from Colin in the panel as well, from to all of the points that the young people have raised. So let's continue with this conversation, Omasbuya. This is Expressions.
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions. Today we are speaking about the oldest liberation movement on the continent, the ANC. And of course, this is a conversation that we're having on the back of the January 8th statement that was delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And the poll question that we're posing to you, Kochai, as a young person is, do you as a young person still have the confidence in the ANC, but most importantly, its Youth League? And of course, we've got Colin still with us, and Jamie, and like I said in the first segment, Colin is running for ANC Youth League president. Look, there were a lot of very important comments that I think were made by Umkolisi and the audience that we had with us. I mean, you do sense that young people do feel that the ANC is constantly making empty promises, that there's no action, that it's mediocre. I love the comment around the e-wallet revolutionaries and so forth. And I want to find out from you, because there's an element of young people being able to have the courage to speak truth to power. As someone who's going to be running, or at least hopefully you might get the presidency, what are you going to do differently? How are you going to make sure that you speak truth to power?
The most important thing that I've learned over years, I think I've been in politics from the age of 13 years, and I've been to many conferences where we elected many leaders. There's one significant conference that I want to mention, the 2011 conference of the ANC Youth League, where we resolved that we want economic freedom in our lifetime, because we've identified that there's a generation of leaders that went to exile, won for political freedom, and our people can no longer survive on votes anymore. They want to fully participate in the economy of their own country. And they want the demographics, the economy of the country must reflect the demographics of the country. Now, that was a clear program. But the problem is that if, as young people, we can resolve on these things, but if we don't take over leadership of the ANC, as a Marapod, because in the beginning I said the ANC is the ruling party, the one that is in election. Now, we need to make sure that we go and elect young leaders to lead the ANC. It can't be that the ANC is led by pensioners when there's so many young, talented people who must take responsibility for their own lives. Because young people of South Africa, another problem that we're faced with, we don't want to wage a revolution to take responsibility of our own lives. And I want to lead a youth league that will take decisions. after they take decision, mobilize society, all young people to take responsibility of their own life, take leadership in important sectors, take leadership in SABC, take leadership in ESCOM, take leadership everywhere. Then we say we protect our own country. How do you have confidence on someone who's 70 years and above, who's telling you about a 20, 50 years project? That they won't be there to account for that project. They'll be dead by the time when accountability must happen. But if you've got a young person who's in their 20s and their 30s who tells you about a 10-year program, you know very well the chances are high that will be there to take accountability for their own life. Now, the next revolution for economic freedom in our lifetime, it is not going to be led by old people. They're highly compromised, they're implicated in corruption. Some of them went to exile. When they came back into the country, they had houses, they had cars. No one knows who bought them those things. Now, you can't expect them to wage a revolution.
Yeah.
Now, that revolution is going to be waged by a strong youth league with the young people participating in the youth league to making sure that they take over the ANC leadership.
Yeah, okay, so let me come in there. And Jamie, let me give you, just the final say. I mean, this is still a party that is still struggling to find itself. The center doesn't seem to be holding, and they seem to be tone deaf. We've been hearing this. What Colin is saying, we've been hearing this. Now that we're going into local elections and a lot of young people now are going to be given a voice, the question is still, is this a party that young people can rely on? Is this a party that young people can be confident in terms of their leadership?
Well, I think what young people are going to have to see during the year from the ANC Youth League and people contesting for power in the ANC Youth League are calls for the kind of renovations to the economy that are required to get young people to participate. Recently, Elon Musk became the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos is number 2, and several other people who are in that top 10 are coming from the digital economy. So if we want to give young people economic opportunities where they can create their own businesses in the township, in rural areas, that has to come from the digital economy. What we need to see the ANC Youth League advocating for is for fiber internet to be available in rural areas and in every township of South Africa. That will allow young people to innovate in their homes, to create garage economies in their homes, in the back rooms. So I think the reality is until the youth begin to see a different kind of revolution, because we need to see a revolution of policy, a revolution of management. Youthfulness in and of itself is meaningless. That youthfulness must come with capacity. It must come with new ideas, new understanding of policy and action. So if they don't show that, then I don't think that the youth should lean towards the ANC Youth League.
Yeah, shucks. I mean, there's definitely a lot to really think about, but I think a lot of important, words of wisdom that young people definitely need to take from this conversation. Gentlemen, Colin, Jamie, a big thank you for having this conversation with us. Nkolisi, I'm going to throw it back to you so that you can wrap up the show for us. Thanks.
Right. Maybe just one last parting shot, just a quick one from you. Take to the mic. And of course, so many has come out of the conversation so many insights have come out of the conversation we've had. As a young person, what's your parting shot with us today?
Well, then again, I mean, I'd still go back to ensuring that I speak on young people that are excluded, particularly when we're looking at financial literacy. Then again, question is, what is it that the ANC is going to be doing to ensure that more and more young people have access to financial literacy? Because then again, financial literacy is a crisis in this country. We do not have financial literacy in our education system. How then do you ensure that financial literacy is within the education? Thank you.
All right, guys, I have to thank you so much for joining us on today's show. It's sad that we've ran out of time. I would have liked to hear what you all had to say. Again, now Mbugeli Lapikaya, thank you so much for watching the show. Namhlanje, and thank you so much for your participation in Kundlen Zethu Zokuxhumana. This has been Expressions. Till we see you again, Msale kahle.